I mean, we're on the northern end of the Gulf where we're at.
Right.
So we get a lot of big, you asked about cobia a while ago. I mean, we get a lot of cobia 60 to 80 pound range over here, which are huge. I've seen fish over 100 pounds several times offshore, within 20, 30 miles. But I do notice that, near, you fish in Venice a lot, so the Mississippi River Delta, that whole area is just so nutrient loaded. You have a bigger congregation of the larger tunas and a lot of the pelagics over there. I think because of that specifically, our tunas over here, I just went tuna fishing for yellowfin last week. And, our average fish is in the 60 to 80 pound range. And we get, a lot of smaller ones too, but a big tuna for over here is 125 to 150 pound yellowfin for sure. Hi there, this is Derek York with the Impact Outdoors podcast, and this is the Tom Rowland podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast today. We got a good one for you. Derek York hosts the Impact Outdoors podcast. He's a cool guy, does a lot of work with kids, getting them into the outdoors and doing some cool programs like the Texas Brigades. We're going to talk about that and all his work with the fisheries and tagging sharks and all kinds of other cool stuff. So stick around for a great interview with Derek York from Impact Outdoors. And one more thing is, if you like this podcast, which I hope that you do, it's become a lot of what I do. So I'm trying to get the best guests possible. I'm trying to have the best interviews possible and deliver the best content to you guys that I can. One way that I've been able to do that is to receive guest suggestions, show suggestions, topic suggestions, questions from you guys. And I listen. I really do. We've gotten some of the best guests that we've had on the podcast because someone has suggested it from the audience. I go and check these people out, and sure enough, they are really cool people. I'm sure you know some people like that. I like good guests. I like guests that have a story. They don't have to be Bill Dance or Roland Martin or anybody that anybody's ever heard of. Lots of people have cool stories. That is not the defining thing of a good guest, in my opinion. So if you have suggestions about guests, about show topics, you have questions you'd like for me to answer on the podcast, there is one way to get a hold of me and give me all of those things. It is the best way. It is a text number that I have set up. It is area code 305-930-7346. You can text the word team to that, and you will be in the inner circle. If you want updates and all the cool stuff that we're doing, I'll be happy to provide that to you there. If you want to just ask questions, fire away, whatever you want to do. If you have suggestions for the show, that would be awesome, especially guest suggestions. And if you like this podcast, you can also go to iTunes and give us a rating and review. 5 stars would be the best, and a review you can look at some of the reviews that are up there, and people have said the nicest things, and it's so cool to see that. But a lot of times they just say, I really like this one particular episode, and this is why. That's a great review. Whatever you want to do, whatever you want to say is fine. That would be awesome. So that will help other people to find the show and help the show keep growing. We can have more and better guests and keep doing it for a lot longer. So that's it for today. Stick around for this awesome interview with Derek York from Impact Outdoors coming right now. Derek, what's happening? How are you?
Hey, man, we're just hanging out over here in South Texas, man. Just taking it one day at a time. Pretty busy right now. Lots going on. So
really?
How are you, buddy?
Well, I'm doing well. What do you got going on?
Well, we just finished up our big event that we had over in West Texas, and had some Rolling Boys over here with us. We had a great opportunity to do a big networking event with them. I was kind of looking at something to do with my podcast and get some other people involved and from across the United States. And luckily had Turner and Hayden come over as one of the podcasts, and had some people from New York, Ohio, Montana, Texas, Oklahoma, and a few other places come in, and we had a great time. Did some turkey hunting. No turkeys were harmed during that weekend, but we seen plenty, and I think Turner and Hayden both were pretty close to getting a bird, but they got some good footage and stuff. But we had a great time. It was a great networking event, and really looking forward to see where that program goes next year.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting that you're getting that going because, there's a lot of people that are doing podcasts. Most people that are doing podcasts these days are not being successful with it. In other words, there's about 90% of the podcasts only make it 1 or 2 episodes. So getting together and helping each other out and kind of talking about it, that certainly will help. It'll go a long way to making sure that people can kind of continue with it, because I don't know, what do you think it is about? I mean, you've had your podcast going for a while and you've probably seen other podcasts start and stop. What do you think it is about that? What's the challenge there that people start one but they don't finish it?
It's definitely a challenge. It is a lot more work than most people think it probably is, as you well know.
Yeah.
I mean, when I started mine, I was like, I talked to several people and they were just like, consistency is the thing. And being able to provide the content on a routine basis so people get accustomed to that. And that's been a challenge here lately, but we've been really good at putting out an episode every other week. And I think just, you got to make the time for it. So I've got a pretty crammed schedule with everything I've got going on, working full time. And I've got a charter business I run, and then starting up the podcast, and then 2 little kids. So it's, a lot of short night's sleep, but in the end, it's been worth it over the past year and a half. I've been doing it and really trying to take that next step and grow it, to a bigger national audience. And, I've been really blessed to have some great guests over the last year, including yourself. And that's been a plus, because as you well know, social media is such a big deal, and doing interviews with people and having them share it and stuff. And it's just the effect of it all.
Who has been one of your favorite guests so far?
Well, Tom Rowland. And then I had a really good interview with Cuz Strickland from Mossy Oak a few weeks back. And just hearing some of the stories about how the hunting TV world and industry all started up back in the 80s, and back when the best TV, was really starting to come out for hunting and fishing and stuff like that. And then I interviewed Al McGlashan down in Australia a few months back, and that was a lot of fun. It was a late one. I had to interview him about 1 o'clock in the morning here, Texas time. So to be able to talk to him, and that was a good interview. And I've met a lot of people through Instagram, and that's a great place to find people to interview, and a lot of people you've never heard of. One really, really cool relationship we've developed over the past years with a group called Kids Outdoors, and they're based up north, and they do a lot with their kids, traveling around the country and showing them hunting and fishing and wildlife, survival techniques and stuff like that. We've had them down here to Texas last year and filmed a couple episodes for their show on the water, and just really developed a good relationship with them and several other people. So
nice. So you still have your Texas Brigades. Are you still involved with that?
Yes. Yeah. And we're right in the middle of getting ready to start up our camp season. So we have, my wife and I got asked to be part of this program, the Texas Brigades, back in late 2009, and serving as just instructors at a freshwater fisheries conservation and leadership camp. We knew nothing about it, so we went ahead and jumped in, and it's a 5-day program. These kids are selected from all across Texas and some from even out of Texas, and they come in, they stay for the whole time. And we show up and we kind of have our game plan for every day. It's a very rigorous schedule for the kids, and not really knowing how it was going to go, but we were so hooked the first couple of days, and seeing the efforts the kids put into this program and what, we get back as the adults and stuff is just tremendous. The program really instills developing leadership and public speaking skills with these kids, which is, as you know, is hard to come by these days for anybody.
And that's kind of wrapped into the outdoors as well.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. So how do you do that? How do you teach them public speaking skills and leadership?
We kind of do it. what's the word, subliminally, so they don't really know it at first.
Right.
The kids are all divided up into different groups, schools, flocks, coveys, whatever, for each camp, and so they work as a team throughout the week. And so we have a lot of basically our schedule starts at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning and runs till about 11 o'clock at night, and it's pretty much nonstop, and we're changing from classroom settings to outdoor settings, and really try to do is everything we can hands-on. That way they retain the information. And because if you don't do it yourself, you're never going to remember, what you've done during the week. So, but as far as the public speaking and stuff, we do a lot of where they have to, one of the simplest things we do is we give each student a quote at the beginning of the first day. And so their job initially is to memorize that quote. And then they have to get up in front of the group throughout the first couple of days and say their quote, and then say what it means to them, how they interpret that. And that really kind of is the first step in breaking that shell, to get them up. And some of the kids are really introverted, like I was when I was younger. I hated talking in front of anybody.
Yeah.
And but that really, really works. And I'll give a real quick example. We had, and this was at the Bass Brigade camp, probably 2012 or something like that. We had a young lady that showed up, first time she'd ever been away from home. And, it's pretty, I'm sure nerve-wracking going into something like this. And she had a really hard first day and second day, wanted to go home. We had her on the phone with the parents trying to get her. And by the third day, she had realized what we were doing and got, she just took over. And by the end of the week, the cadets, the kids that are at camp, and all the instructors, we vote on the top cadet for that whole week. And she won that year.
Really?
She did a 180. And that just proved to us, the success of the program and what we're doing is working for these kids. And being involved with it over the last 10 plus years, I guess now, we've seen these kids go out of high school after they went through the brigades programs, multiple camps each summer. And now they went into college, and now they've got jobs, in their careers and stuff. And, we're not looking to make them all biologists or game wardens and things like that. We just want them to be conservation aware, be well informed, because it's a passion that they obviously already have, love being outdoors, and being successful in life. And the skills that we're teaching them at these programs is really helping to do that.
That's cool. So how do you go about picking the quotes that you're going to give all these kids?
Oh, we've got a long list of stuff we've used over the years, and just from all different people, and they're just predetermined. There's no, we have they each get a journal every week, and so we just attach the quote inside that, and they get it, and it's pretty funny because we get a lot of these quotes that we use every year, and you hear just different interpretations of them. And it's pretty cool to see how the kids react to them and stuff. And some of the other stuff that we do, which is pretty interesting. So this is very conservation oriented, right? So, my day jobs, I work for the state here in Texas as a fisheries technician here in Galveston. And we do a lot of public meetings, as I'm sure FWC does over in Florida, about certain issues and stuff when they're looking at changing regulations and things like that. And so we do a mock stakeholder meeting with the kids, and we assign each one of the groups of kids a different role to play in that, whether it's representing a group like CCA or commercial fishermen or recreational fishermen or some group like PETA or something like that, that would normally show up to some of these meetings, to voice their opinions. And we'll pick a topic. Some of the ones we've used in the past are, flounder is a big issue down here, along with oysters, and obviously trout and redfish. The trout regulations have been changing quite a bit the last few years. And so we'll pick one of those, and they basically have a few days to go over that, come up with their strategy. And then we have a panel of instructors that sits up in the front of the room. They come up in front of everybody and present their case, whether they're for or against it, and why or why not. And then we grade them on that. And so that's one of the things they're competing all week for different prizes and things like that at the end, kind of as an incentive, fishing trips and different things. So that kind of helps along with that. But it's pretty funny. These kids are so creative, man. Some of them will get dressed up in waders and all kinds of stuff, make signs and all kinds of cool stuff. So it's a pretty neat experience. So, and then we do other things. We do a lot of team building events throughout the week. Just try to get them going. So some of them are, we do a lot of them are trust things. So we'll do like what we call a lap sit, and we'll have everybody sitting or stand in a circle, and then we'll just have everybody sit down and see if they can create a sitting circle on top of each other's knees and stuff. And we'll do different things, where they've got to, one of the funniest things we do is where they really got to work together is we have a giant rubber ring tied to ropes, and we'll have the 6 or 7 people in each group each have a rope, and they have to be able to move and stack cans, like coffee cans or something like that, on top of each other in a pyramid or whatever. We'll give them different things to work on. And you think it sounds pretty stupid, but it's actually a really cool way to get them to talk to each other and not be, they have to learn not to yell over each other and really work together to accomplish that goal. So,
yeah. And then as far as the, outdoor stuff, like once you kind of get them to be understanding these leadership qualities and the public speaking and all of that, like what's involved in the camp as far as hands-on kind of outdoor stuff?
So, we start out the first day, kind of just going over the fish biology and anatomy. We do some dissections. We're heavily involved with Texas A&M University of Galveston. And so we have a lot of my friends down there from the shark and fish lab come in. And so we'll do some dissections on sharks and fish and go over just basic anatomy and biology of the fish. But really the cool stuff, we get in, we take them out on the boats, and so they get to go out firsthand and see how, as fisheries managers, we collect our data. And so we get to show them how we utilize shrimp nets for catching stuff out on the bay bottoms. We'll run a small gill net, and so they can see how that is, effective on sampling the larger fish. We do bag seines, oyster dredges, and different things like that, and kind of go over what we catch and why those species are found in that particular area versus the other areas and things. And then we also do we're lucky because where we have Coastal Brigade in Galveston, we're close to a lot of stuff, and a lot of the other brigades camps are out in Central and West Texas. So they're, private ranches and things. So we're close to one of our coastal fisheries hatcheries. And so we get to spend a whole day down there, and they get a super in-depth kind of tour of the facility from, how the fish are spawned and how they develop the eggs and the hatchlings and the fish into the stock tanks and stuff. And they really enjoy that. And then we also do a day at the Galveston Island State Park, and we do a huge beach versus bay comparison where we look at different things that we find on the beachfront versus in the bay. We kind of bust the kids back and forth in different groups and do that. And it takes a lot of people to put this on. I mean, we utilize a ton of volunteers. We have anywhere from 20 to 30 volunteers a day helping with all this, because we try to, the classroom stuff is everybody together, but when we go out, we do rotational types setups. And so it's more hands-on. So it's smaller groups, more attention to them from the instructors. And that really seems to be the ticket, to making everything work.
How does a kid get involved in that? Like, how would somebody go to that? You said they had to be selected, but
it is a competitive process. The application process for brigade starts November 1st and usually ends March 15th. And it's basically all online. They just have to go to the brigade's website, texasbrigades.org, O-R-G. And there's an application on there for that. They just have to fill out basically, stuff about school, any extracurricular stuff they do. We kind of base the scoring of the applications on that, but they also have to write 2 essays, and those questions for the essays change every year. Usually one's on a why are you, passionate about conservation or the outdoors? And one's usually tailored towards the leadership question, who's a leader, that kind of thing. And
That's interesting. So kind of the kids that are doing really well in school are the ones that are getting selected for this. Like you have that application and the essays and stuff like that. It seemed like it would kind of lend itself to somebody that is already
yeah,
doing
you
well.
would think that. And we get a lot of kids, as far as the application goes, when we're grading them, that they don't have a lot of sports and like doing FFA and 4-H and stuff like that, but they really shine in their writing and their essays, and they're not long essays, Tom. They're like 500 words or something like
Yeah.
that, but that's one thing that I'm always concerned about, is, everybody gets a fair chance at this, and it's worked out. We've got tons of kids from all different backgrounds and walks of life, and it's really been cool to see how successful they've been after going through the
Oh,
through
I'm
the
sure.
program.
It sounds like an amazing program. But when I hear that, I think about myself in how old are these kids?
These are 13 to 17
13
year
to
olds.
17. Okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I had started to kind of understand the way the world worked by then, but not necessarily at 13 or 14. I didn't do really very well in school. I just it's hard for me to concentrate. I liked the sports aspect of it. It was really cool there, and it wasn't like, I don't know. I probably would have been diagnosed with 8 or 10 learning disabilities. Had today's medicine been part of it. But something like that program would have probably really had an amazing impact on me. Somebody that wasn't interested in school, somebody that wasn't interested, thought learning was boring, right? But I wasn't
Yep.
learning the things that I was interested in. Where sometimes if you can get to that kid that is like that, and you can show them
Mm-hmm.
something that they're interested in, and man, all of a sudden you see that they're not dumb. They're incredibly smart, actually. They just were incredibly non-interested in what's going on in school. Have you seen
Yep.
that kind of an example play out?
Absolutely. And, we've got several kids that come to mind. Well, they're not kids now, they're adults, but that have, kind of came in that same, exactly what you're talking about, didn't have the best GPA and things like that. And just needed something to grab their attention.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the success of this program, which this program's been around for almost 30 years now,
Wow.
um, is just that, being able to give them something that they don't get in normal public education, which is the hands-on stuff. I mean, you're in a class, especially today. I mean, look at it now. Half these kids are still working from home across the country, and so being able to provide these opportunities for them to one, meet all these professionals, in this world, private and public both, as far as fisheries and wildlife biologists and game wardens, and people working in the private sector and things like that, and just being able to get the experience of being around them. It's huge.
Mm.
And everybody I know says the same thing. It's like, man, why didn't they have this when I was growing up? I
Right.
mean, I grew up in Oklahoma, and they have something now. It's similar. It's a 1-day program, but and there's lots of youth camps and stuff like that are fishing camps or hunting camps, but a lot of them don't really instill the characteristics that we're trying to help these kids develop, with the public speaking and the leadership and team building and
Yeah,
stuff.
that's a really interesting dynamic to throw in there because, again, you have somebody that would be really, really, really uncomfortable getting in front of the class to do a math problem. But if you're talking about something that they're interested in, they might be the best in the whole class at public speaking when they're talking about an
Yeah.
issue that they're interested in. Like, I don't know, what something associated with redfish, or like you said, the flounder. Um, they might really do well with that. But I'm sure that you see that all the time. But that's cool that's going on there. How many sessions will you guys put on in the summer?
So we have 8 camps, and they all run in June and July. The first one starts June 1st or 2nd this summer. And the other camps include, we have a North and South Texas camp on bobwhite quail, covering
Really?
the quail habitat and stuff, working with bobwhites and all the other different species that live here in Texas. We have a North and South Texas buckskin brigade focusing on whitetail deer. And then we have the Bass Brigade, which is all freshwater. And Gary Klein, one of the founders from Major League Fishing, is heavily involved with that program, along with a lot of other great people. We spent a lot of time up there. We spent about 6 years working with that program, and it's awesome. We have one on ranch, the ranch industry, called Ranch Brigade, and that is one of our most popular camps, for sure. Really working, just on rangeland ecology, ranching lifestyle with cattle and things like that. And they do a lot of fun things. They have T-post driving contests and all kinds of crazy stuff. But
do you get to fish in the ranch tanks?
The Bass Brigade camp does.
Yeah, man.
They have it at the same place.
That'd be worth going just for that. I know that there's some amazing fishing in some of those.
Oh yeah,
what they call stock tanks. They can, you get to them and you're thinking it's going to be this rectangular shaped,
mud pit,
and it's a lake bigger than the one that you have at your house. Everything's bigger in Texas. That's what they say before you go there. And when you get there, you realize, oh, yeah, it's not just a little bit bigger. Like everything is like way bigger. I'm going to this person's house and I've passed 3 houses on the way in and they're all bigger than any house I've ever seen. And those are all considered the guest house. Like how far could this driveway go?
Right.
Miles. And then finally you get to the main house and they're like, oh, you can go fish in the pond. And you drive over the little hill and there's a giant lake there. You're like, well, where's the pond? Because this doesn't seem like the pond.
This is it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just funny, man. That everything is bigger in Texas, and including the hospitality. I've had really good luck there with hospitality and just people just being generally incredibly nice and welcoming. And I mean, Texas is a good state, man.
It is, and being born in Oklahoma and living there for 21, 22 years, Oklahoma is the same way. And I always said when I was growing up, I said, I'll never move to Texas. That was kind of, our arch rival in every sport and everything. And I'll probably never leave Texas now. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, Oklahoma is nice and everything, but you're missing a major part of what is interesting about Texas, and that's the coast.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the Texas coast, I did a podcast with, Stilthouse. What's it? Well, God, I'm forgetting his name.
I remember
Mike Madrano. Mike Madrano. We met in Christmas Island, and he just wrote this incredibly beautiful book on the stilt houses of Texas. And really, when you start flipping through that book, if you've been to Texas once or twice or whatever, you start flipping through that book, and you're like, whoa, there is obviously a lot of Texas that I haven't seen and that I should go see. But that is a cool book. If you haven't read that or picked it up, or if you're a fan of beautiful coffee table books, it's got Tim Romano photography in it, and it's just it's really one of the nicest books that I have on my shelf here, and it's just cool. But parts of Texas look like South Carolina, parts of Texas look like the Florida Keys, parts of Texas look like obviously Mexico, and further south than that, it's just a cool place. I like that Port Aransas area when I've fished. I have incredibly limited Texas fishing experience, but Port Aransas is a place that we went and spent about a week pre-fishing for a redfish tournament, and that was nice. We were also in Kemah, and I keep harping on how bad Kemah was, but sorry for that.
We got to get you back over, because Kemah is literally about 5 minutes from where I'm at now. So
you know how to fish in that muddy water?
Catch a lot of redfish over there.
I'm sure you do. So, I'm sure there's a lot of redfish to catch. It's just the kind of thing where you just it was the polar opposite of our fishing. I mean, we're used to clear water, shallow water. I was just like, man, obviously this looks like the Florida Keys after a Category 5 hurricane here. Yeah. This is what that water looks like. But the guys that were there, man, they knew how to catch them. They could absolutely do it. And I'm sure you can too. But it's interesting and a different deal. Those guys are fishing slicks, where the fish are eating under the surface, and you see a slick on top of the water where they are eating these menhaden or whatever they're eating, and they leave a slick. And sure enough, you fish that just like you fish a wake or a tail
Hmm.
or anything like a roll, a tarpon roll,
Yep.
something that is visible that shows you where the fish are. And I mean, that was all new to us, you know.
Yep. I mean, we've got a lot of marsh and stuff, and but
Mm-hmm.
like you said, water visibility here is totally different. Even from Port Aransas. Port Aransas is a lot generally cleaner looking
Mm-hmm.
water,
Yeah.
and it's just the sediment load is all it is. We're kind of it's kind of, I guess, probably not the best term, but I mean, I always call we're kind of up in the armpit of the Gulf of Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So we have predominant southeast flow, from the Gulf, and that just always constantly pushing sediment up into this end of this area, and so we have a lot, more stained water, and but we get our days where it looks like Bermuda in the
Really?
summertime, and
Right
last
there,
year was.
like out of Kima?
Yeah, we get some days where it's just crystal clear. Last year was incredible all summer long. Usually we'll get it in days, a week at the most, where we'll have really nice water. But last summer, man, I ran a lot of trips out of the Gulf passes and then lower part of the bay, and just beautiful conditions, almost to the point where it was harder to catch fish, just because we're not used to fishing in that.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of had a reverse role there, but we still, we got a lot of pelagics that came into the bay and stuff, a lot more triple tail than normal, and cobia and things like that. So that's always exciting.
You would see what's like a good sized cobia or a good sized
Oh,
triple
we
tail,
get
both
some.
of them.
I've caught several triple L's up to 15 pounds over
That's
here.
good.
State records right around 30, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Down. Most of the bigger triple tail in Texas tend to be caught south of here in the Matagorda Bay
Really?
ecosystem. But we do get quite a few good numbers up here. But the Matagorda Bay produces a lot of big fish in the bay.
Have you?
They are typically fishing crab trap pots and stuff for
Mm-hmm.
them.
Yeah, that's the same kind of thing that we do in the Keys for the triple tail. Except in the last couple of years, there's just been this explosion of triple tail numbers, and
Yeah.
they're not necessarily keying in on any structure. You just get into an area, and you look out there, and there's a black fish floating there, and another one over there, and another one over there, and another one over there. One of the things with your fisheries work, one of the things that we saw with our triple tail last year was this red sore on their
Hmm.
shoulder, right? And it was always, I mean, it was so visible that you would see a black fish with a red spot on it. And sometimes you would see the
Hmm.
red spot before you would see even anything else. And I asked a bunch of different biologists and people that should know a lot more about fish than I do, what they thought that was. And obviously, Richard Black and all the fishing guides I talked to, they're saying, well, it's probably some sort of spawning thing where they're rubbing up against something, another fish,
Right.
or a fish is biting them or something. But it's only on one side, and it's right on the shoulder area.
Huh.
And it wasn't like a sore, like a sick fish. It was
Hmm.
like it was more like when fish are bedding and their tails get
Right.
kind of worn, and you can see that like it's gonna heal, and it doesn't form like a sore or a cyst or anything like that, but it's just this red spot where the scales have been knocked off. And I mean, Rich even was like, Maybe they're getting sunburned, like that." But I don't think they're getting sunburned. Uh,
I don't know. I haven't seen any of that on any fish over here, or heard of anything like that over here.
I'll send
But I
you a
mean,
picture of it. In
yeah,
fact, maybe
I'd
I
love to
don't know
see it.
if I can do it right now, but we'll put it in post. Connor can put a picture up of what we're talking
Yeah,
about. But gosh, maybe I could send it to you. I don't
yeah.
know. I'll probably if I
But
start doing this. Connor's not here today, and if I start doing this, I'm probably gonna hang up on you, and that'll be it.
well,
So we'll put it up there,
well,
but I'll send you a picture after, and you can check it out. But
yeah.
yeah, interesting thing. And what do you think about the theory that fish are the largest in the northernmost portion of their range, generally, as a general rule of thumb?
I don't know. As far as around here, I mean, I don't really think. I mean, we're on the northern end of the Gulf where we're at.
Right.
So we get a lot of big, you asked about cobia a while ago. I mean, we get a lot of cobia 60 to 80 pound range
Yeah,
over
that's a
here, which
good
are
one.
huge. I've seen fish over 100 pounds several times offshore, within 20, 30 miles. But I do notice that, near, you fish in Venice a lot, so the Mississippi River Delta, that whole area is just so nutrient loaded. You have a bigger congregation of the larger tunas
Right.
and a lot of the pelagics over there. I think because of that specifically, our tunas over here. I just went tuna fishing for yellowfin last week, and our average fish is in the 60 to 80 pound range, and we get a lot of smaller ones too, but a big tuna for over here is 125 to 150 pound yellowfin for sure. But it's weird though, because we're seeing increased numbers in bluefin tuna catches right now too, the last several years.
There's been a lot more bluefins. We're seeing them in the Keys. It helps with Instagram because, maybe back not even that many years ago, you might hear somebody and they're like, I think we saw a bluefin. You don't know,
yeah.
But now there's a 5-minute video of a bluefin circling the boat and coming right next to the boat. I mean, it was a bluefin. There was a guy had a video of a yellowfin underneath one of the bridges in the Keys, and it's like 6 feet deep there, and it's swimming
crazy?
under the bridge. And you might hear somebody say, "Oh yeah, I saw a tuna." You're like, that was definitely a Jack Crevalle. I don't think that you know what you're talking about. But then there's a video, and it's not like just a quick little snippet. It's minutes of video of this tuna underneath the bridge. It's crazy, but there's been a lot more bluefins seen in the Keys. There have been a lot more bluefins seen in other places. It's interesting. I haven't heard about them in Texas, but I wonder what's going on there.
I don't know.
You're seeing that.
They just broke the state record like 3 or 4 weeks ago with one that was, I think it was 786 pounds.
Okay, so these aren't just the tiny ones.
No, these are the big breeding. Yeah, these are monster tunas.
Well, go ahead.
No, I mean there's literally been dozens of them caught that I know of in the last 2 years, specifically out at the floaters, which are anywhere from 100 to 150 miles offshore the Texas coast, in that 2,000 to 3,000 foot of water range. We're not seeing them in close, but they are showing up more over here. Maybe it's just more people fishing, and people recording and bringing these things up to the surface. But it's definitely been interesting to hear about all these.
I know. I mean, I hope that means that there are more of them. And that's what that is signaling towards, but you can't make a correlation of that just because people are seeing more doesn't necessarily mean that there are more of them. I mean, there are also more cell phones with video. There are also different methods of fishing. There's also, more center console type boats going way out further than normal, which leads to more people just on the water at all. I mean, the same thing with the great white shark. In the Keys, it was, seemingly unheard of for most people that there were great white sharks around. Now, the commercial fishermen I knew, they know there have been great white sharks there for a long time, and they just never said anything about them. But after Chris Fisher, tags all these sharks, and then you have this these tracking things. Well, sure enough, they come right through there, and they come right through South Carolina, and they come through all these places. And it's like, well, maybe we have been seeing them more, or maybe none are being sighted, but there are obviously some around. And it could be the same thing for the bluefin tuna. One of the coolest stories I ever heard about the bluefin tuna was a guy named Tom Pierce, and he's a legendary fisherman. He fished a lot in Key West and Sebastian Inlet, and he's a real gem. Really, he's done it all. He's got a tremendous amount of knowledge and experience. And he was telling me that they used to have the tournaments in the Bahamas, and they were tuna tournaments for bluefin. And that people did not see that giant fish as a food fish. It was not considered a food fish then. And they used to just take them in, weigh them. And then when the tournament was over, they tie them all by the tails, and they drag them out to the edge of the ledge and just sink them. And those fish now, that's a $20,000-$30,000 fish. And it's just funny. It's just a fish that nobody considered them valuable.
Yeah. And they have a mystique around them. I mean, one of the things I talked extensively with Al McGlashan down in Australia about is he's a huge advocate for fishing policies and things like that. And he just did a documentary on the bluefin species down there, the southern bluefin, and I highly recommend watching that. I think it's called Life on the Line. But just talking about how the changes over time in the fishing aspect, like what you're talking about, and how now they're managed to be successful in the commercial fishing industry and still have a good population to keep reproducing and stuff. And it's totally different than anything I've seen done here, as far as how they fish for them and stuff. And it's a pretty cool thing to watch. And yeah, I mean, it's just a unique species. And talking about Chris, I had Chris and Brett on the show earlier this year, and I've known Chris for a while, and we do a lot of shark tagging at work. And so we've utilized spot tags and the PSAT tags and different things like that. And it's incredible to see where these sharks go over a short amount of time. We haven't tagged any great whites, obviously, but we tag a lot of bull sharks, black tips, spinners. We've tagged a few tiger sharks and scalloped and greater hammerheads and things like that. And we tagged a bull shark over here off of Galveston one year, and within 2 weeks, that fish. And normally we don't put a satellite tag on a bull shark because they're not a basking shark. They don't really come to the surface a lot. But we were trying to get some tags out for A&M, and they went ahead and tagged this shark, and it was a big male, probably about 300 pounds. And within 2 weeks, that fish was swimming 80 miles up the Mississippi River.
Up the Mississippi?
From here.
Wow.
Yeah.
He was 80 miles up the Mississippi?
Yeah. And those,
so where would that put him? 80 miles up from Venice? That
probably
would be
past New Orleans, I would think.
Sure.
So
yeah. But that makes a lot of sense with a bull shark. I mean, I don't know how many people have fished in the mouth of the Mississippi like that. I mean, even like just 5 or 10 miles up the Mississippi. But I've been there with my friend Anthony Randazzo, and he shows you. He's like, "Well, the trout are here," and you're like, "How do you know?" And he's like, "Look at the bottom machine." And I'm looking at the bottom machine. I'm like, "Well, it looks like it's 15 feet deep." And he goes, "Yeah, but from there to there is trout thick." I thought we were marking the bottom. We're marking the top of the trout school, and it's like a carpet across the bottom of the Mississippi River.
Isn't that crazy?
So many trout. I mean, I can't even imagine uncountable numbers of trout, and just the health of that area is unbelievable. How many fish and what that river dumping into the Gulf of Mexico does to create a fishing habitat or a fishery habitat for fish species to grow. I mean, it's got to be the most valuable place as far as the ocean goes. That has to be one of the most valuable places in the world, because it's a fish factory. I mean, that's what you hear people talk about. But until you see that, and then you jump up on plane and you run, a mile, and it's still like that. You're like, well, it's been like that since where we left. And he's like, yeah, this time of the year. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, just incredible numbers of fish.
And that's why I think people see Louisiana and they have very liberal limits on a lot of their species to keep and stuff for people. And it's because of that. They have so many fish over there. But, bull sharks are funny. They love fresh water. And they've been known to go, I think, over 1,000 miles up the Mississippi River system. They've been tracked that far up north, but we have a very freshwater influenced ecosystem here in Galveston Bay with several rivers dumping in, and they thrive here. I mean, this is a nursery for them. They have their young in the bay here. They grow up and then they move out offshore. And we have a lot of black tips in the bay too. But the passes are where you're going to see most of the bigger predatory, the ones they're famous ones, the tiger sharks and the hammerheads and stuff.
So with the tagging that you've done, what else have you learned about these sharks? Did you have any other interesting movement?
we've noticed that some of the species, come and go, in different patterns, like a real common shark, I'm sure over in Florida, Atlantic sharpnose, and we have over here, with the white spots all over it. We've had a couple of years where they were just gone, like we weren't seeing any of them. And normally we catch, we're utilizing a long line. So it's basically a mile long trot line. Basically, it's got 100 hooks on it, and we'll catch anywhere from 30 to 70 fish in an hour on these things.
And this is all for research.
Yep. So we do it for an hour. So the survival rate's high, and we tag everything, all the sharks, everything's weighed and measured, whether it's a game fish or shark or whatnot. We've been doing that for about 11 or 12 years here. We started catching so many big sharks, we ended up having to have a cradle made. So we've got a giant cradle. It's about 8 foot long, and that we can pull these bigger fish into to get them up on the boat. And it's pretty exciting. I'll send you a video of one of those processes being done. But
and then you're tagging them, weighing them, measuring them,
yep,
all that.
Yep.
So you're obviously this long line's got wire, right? Like a wire leader.
It's all monofilament.
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy. The gangins that we use, the leaders that attach to the main line are 700-pound test. And then they just got a 15-aught mustad circle hook on them, and then the main line's 1,200.
How often with 700? I mean, I don't use 700-pound monofilament, but maybe that's enough. But how often do you just see a gangin that has no hook on it?
Not very often. The problem we have is, we'll catch some of these smaller sharks, and these bigger bull sharks and stuff will come up and eat them.
Right.
Then they get hooked. And so sometimes we will get a chafe issue there where they'll eventually bite through. So we've had a couple, but surprisingly enough, when those big sharks get on, we've had more issues with them. They'll swim them. They're so big, 400 or 500-pound shark will pull these gangins down and bunch up, and then he'll start chewing on the main line. And we've had that happen several times where they've chewed through the main line, and got off. And so we have to go to the other end and reconnect the line and pull it back in from that direction, which is a pain in the rear, but you got to get it back on the boat. So,
right.
But we've had one bull shark that I know was over 500 pounds just based on sizes of these other 400 plus we've caught. And he was so big. That was before we had our cradle, so there was nothing we could do with him, but it was pretty incredible to see a fish that big so close, to where we fish all the time. Most people just don't really think there's that many sharks over here in Texas, but they're all over the place.
Sure are a lot of people wading over there.
Oh,
up to their neck.
Yep.
Like that is an interesting thing with Texas. They go, I mean, I get it when the water's too shallow for your boat to go, or it's going to be weird and you can't see into the water, so you get out and wade. But we noticed a lot of people getting out in chest deep water and wading, and leaving their boat right there. And I just didn't. I mean, I'm sure there's a reason for it, and I still kind of scratch my head a little bit. But that was definitely what was going on.
I don't do a lot of wade fishing. I like my boat, but I'm in the water enough at work. So, but there's a lot. I mean, wade fishing's huge, especially in this bay system. And
well, I think people explained it to me that you're feeling these depressions, and you're in this basically this deserted flat where it's all the same. And if you can find this little depression that's a little bit deeper than the surrounding areas, it could be loaded up with fish, and you may not be able to see that in your boat. You may not be able to feel that unless you're pushing with a push pole. So if you've got a trolling motor, you're not going to notice a 3, 4, 5 inch depression that could hold a lot of fish. So I get that. I mean, I certainly understand that, but chest deep.
Yeah,
seems
a
little on the extreme side for me.
Not me.
Yeah.
So
hey, well, tell me about the issue when we first started talking. You said that flounder was a big issue in Texas. What's the issue with flounder in Texas?
Yeah, so we've been seeing a decline in certain year classes through all of our sampling that we do, and the public, has brought it up multiple times, and it's a hot topic for sure. And the state has went in and trying to be proactive and kind of alleviate some of the things that we're seeing possibly coming in the future with decrease in numbers due
Mm-hmm.
to this. And flounder, they're a very unique species in that they have to have certain parameters when they spawn out in the Gulf. Water temperature is the most important one. If it doesn't get cold enough in the winter, they just don't have a good spawn. And we have had a lot of warm winters recently. The last few have been fairly cold, so we're expecting to see good numbers. And we have been seeing quite a few juvenile flounder coming back in the bay system this year.
Yeah.
From this past winter. But they've when I moved down here, it was crazy because you could keep 10 flounder, and then you had a possession limit, I think, of 20.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the gigging is huge over here. So it's not a game fish in Texas. So you could go out and catch 10 fish and then go back out after midnight and catch another 10 and keep 20 fish. And obviously, with a species that's potentially declining, that's not going to be the greatest thing in the world to have happen.
Right.
And so they've changed the regulations down and dropped the possession limit down to 10, and then now it's down to 5. So most of the year you can keep 5 flounder, 15 inches and up now. And then we've had to implement a total closure now during the fall run between November 1st and December 14th or 15th. So starting this year, there will be no retaining flounder during that time, that 6 weeks, and then it'll open back up to 5 fish. So it'll be interesting to see. It'll take a couple of years to see what that regulation change does. And if it goes back, where they open it back up, which who knows what'll happen. That's not my department, but we go out and collect the samples and things, but definitely trying to be proactive in helping the species get back to where we want it.
Okay.
But it's crazy because we've also had the last few years, we've seen record numbers of flounder being caught, and a lot of that's there's just so many more people on the water. A lot of people fishing. There's so many guides over here, taking 3-4 people out, and catching a lot of fish. But what we're seeing is in a year or two, we're seeing the stock to start going down.
So what would be like in your job as working for the fisheries? What's the next step there? When you notice a decline like that in any species, what is the next step? Do you mount a study, or do you make it a species of interest, or what do you do?
Stock enhancement is what we're working on right now. Hatching these fish in a hatchery. Parks and Wildlife has really been one of the leaders in the country as far as being able to grow out flounder in-house. And it's at a small level now, but with CCA and other groups helping fund some of these research projects, they just completed a whole new hatchery building down here just south of me, specifically for flounder. They have a half the building geared towards growing the rotifers and stuff to feed these fish when they hatch, and then the other half the building. And this is a multi-million-dollar facility that they've started, and they stock millions and millions of trout and redfish on the Texas coast a year. And it does. We have you wouldn't think we did a study probably 10 years ago to see the percentage of fish in the wild. How many of those are from the hatcheries?
How do you tell that?
They have some kind of genetic marker that they utilize.
So they take a DNA sample and they can tell if it's okay.
And so we had over 5% of the fish we were seeing were coming from hatcheries, which is super high. It's usually 1 to 2% from what I've seen in the past. So it does make an impact, putting these fish back in the wild. So we're hoping, they can get the flounder stuff all nailed down, that one day they'll be able to start putting millions of flounder back in the bay, just like the trout and redfish. But they are a lot harder to deal with just because of the temperature variations and stuff. And the flounder can change male to female at birth depending on the temperature of the water. A certain percentage of them will. And so
is it what causes them to change? Warmer water or cooler water?
The colder water will determine, if you have more females versus males.
So if you're hatching these fish, you want more females, I'm assuming.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
They know the temperature that will result in that.
I forget. It's got to be, I can't remember if it's 65 to 67 degrees. Fahrenheit the water temperature's got to be, and a lot of times the Gulf water is still in the 70s in the winter, out where they're spawning. And that's, that's kind of the other hard part about flounders. They spawn in such a vast array of area offshore. We don't really know that much about them.
Has
It's hard
anybody
to-
ever seen that flounder spawn offshore?
Well, we have a lot of they've done some, they're doing a lot of acoustic tagging in
Yeah.
these fish now, and so they're putting array, they've got
Mhm.
different receivers and stuff all over the place, and so they're starting to see those fish move, further out. But I mean, people have caught the southern flounder over here, almost 100 miles offshore. So we know that they're going out there, but without attaching the camera to them, it's so hard to track
I
these
just
things.
wonder what that would look like, a flounder spawn. I mean, we have, different spawns in Florida that are really of note, like the mutton snapper spawn is one in particular.
Mhm.
And divers can go down and check it out. Like there are areas that they do it, and mostly it's at night, but you could conceivably see that with your eyes. And the permit spawn is another one where I don't know if you're going to see spawning behavior, but you certainly see a lot of fish balled up
Mhm.
offshore. But I wonder what the flounder spawn would look like. If that would happen
I
on the
don't
bottom,
know.
or if that would happen mid water column, or how they would do that.
Yeah, I'm not for sure. I just know that the eggs will float and they come back into the estuaries, and that's where they start growing up. So it's definitely a mysterious fish, I guess you
Yeah,
could
well,
say.
it
So
is a mysterious fish. It's a weird fish and a delicious
Yep.
fish. And so the fact that it's a delicious fish would tend to lend itself towards more studies being done for it, and even
Mhm.
even a potentially commercially harvested fish. Um, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, you
We
see a lot
have
of flounder in restaurants and stuff, right? Like, I
Mhm.
mean, it is a commercially viable species with
Yes.
some. I mean, how do they fish for flounder commercially?
We have commercial giggers.
Giggers,
Over here. The limits are a little bit different, a little bit higher for those guys.
but they don't mess with
But
rod
they
and
have
reel or hook and line.
no, not usually.
Hmm.
But those have also been tightened. I can't remember what the exact numbers are right now, Tom, but I know they have been tightened on the commercial side as well, just because of everything that's going on. So, but there's there's also, I think, some, because like you'll go to a lot of like the Asian markets and stuff, and you'll see flounder that have obviously been farm raised
Mm,
fish somehow. And because redfish is a game fish in
right,
Texas, so they
right.
cannot be commercially fished along with spotted sea trout. So you'll see a lot of those that are farm raised. Usually I think they bring them in from Louisiana and stuff like that, so to sell.
That's
But yeah,
tricky, man.
flounder.
You got a bunch of game fish in a fish market. Seems like, how do you know that they are? I
Yeah,
mean,
it's a
it's
paper
easy to
trail.
say, yeah,
Yeah, they
yeah.
got to
These
have the
are,
documentation.
yeah,
So
I guess so.
it's tough, man. I'd hate to be a game warden. So
It's
there's so much
interesting.
stuff
You
going
would
on
like
now.
to have this guy that I just had on the podcast on your podcast. I'm sure you guys have a lot to talk about. But Wayne Saunders, he does
Mhm.
the Warden's Watch podcast. He just joined Waypoint too, so you can get in touch with him really easily. But
Nice.
man, he's just got cool stories, and he's been a game warden all over the place, as far national park ranger and all kinds of different things. And he's just got a lot of different. I mean, if you ever need that voice of a
Yeah.
of a law enforcement kind of game warden type person, he's a good one to have on the show. But I had a really fun time talking to him. What about the oysters? You also mentioned that's another issue you got going on.
Yeah, so the hurricanes have really done a number over here on us since 2008 with Hurricane Ike, and we had Rita right before that, and then Katrina right before that, but Hurricane Ike really wiped out a lot of the oyster population in Galveston
Mm-hmm.
Bay. And our bay system is a little over 600 square miles, and that system basically covered up about 80 to 85% of our live oyster reefs,
Mm-hmm.
and
With
theoretically
silt,
just
with
killed them.
silt
Yeah, just covered them up
yeah.
with silt. And they're not going to survive with that. And so we had to basically formed a new department, I guess, in our division, working extensively on oyster habitat development and stuff. And so we've tried lots of different things, working heavily with the commercial industry. Back then we did some bagless dredging. So they would go out with their oyster dredges, which are like 48 inches wide, and take the bags off. And we were trying to just pull the shell material back up to the top. So
did that work?
When we have it worked to an extent. It was a lot of work for sure. But with that, we also started testing different culch materials, different types of river rock and things like that would work best for spat, which is the baby oysters to attach to. And so we found, I can't remember what kind of rock it was, what bedrock, but they found some that was working really well. And so we started utilizing money from the federal money we were getting to purchase this rock and bring in and start planting these reefs over on historically live reef areas and in some new areas to build new reefs. And we had reefs that we built that were anywhere from 20 to 100 plus acres in size all over the bay, and where the salinity levels are good for oysters to grow. And the oyster habitat here is, huge area for us to fish. I mean, that's where most people are fishing oyster reefs and stuff over here, especially in the summertime for trout and things like that. And so that made a big impact on the fishery, and the health. I mean, we've seen higher turbidity levels in the water just because the water's not getting filtered as much and things. And so we kind of got through Hurricane Ike and started rebuilding that. And then we're doing pretty good. And then recently we had Hurricane Harvey come in and did the total opposite and just inundated us with nearly 60 inches of rainwater in a couple of days. And all that fresh water stayed in the bay for nearly a month and basically killed all the oysters again.
Oh boy.
And so we're back, doing similar things over again now. So, but we've also changed a lot of the regulations for the commercial guys, and they're, just trying to bring more people to the table and help rebuild these reefs and stuff with new culch, new rock, new shell. So part of those regulations is requiring these companies that run these oyster boats, to give back and put more material back every year, to help, replenish the stock that they're taking out.
Interesting. What about CCA? Are they helping with those type things? I know they do in Florida.
CCA does. Yeah. CCA does a lot. They do a lot of ongoing projects throughout the year, all up and down the Texas coast, obviously, working on oyster reefs, and then just other general habitat restoration projects, in areas that are heavily eroded and things like that. And then we also have here in Galveston, we've got the Galveston Bay Foundation, which does a lot of stuff with oysters. They do a big program where, people are growing oysters in bags on their docks, and then they'll go and collect all those and then plant oyster reefs with those every year. So, but there's a lot of good groups.
Yeah. Blair Wiggins is working with the CCA in Florida to help the water quality through initiatives like that. And they've been really successful, I think, with that. And they do the bag thing on the docks, and, getting a lot of people involved, as well as, just spreading the word and raising awareness that this is certainly an issue. Well, good. I'm glad that people are involved with that for sure. But it's a shame that the oyster is such a important part of the filtration of the water. Like it is the ocean filter.
Yep.
And when they go, either through natural process or through our own mistakes, it's not good.
Yeah. The good thing is they grow pretty quick.
Yeah.
So 3 years and you'll have an oyster that's legally harvestable. They got to be 3 inches long. So they grow about 1 inch a year. And like you said, they can filter crazy amounts of water per day.
Yeah.
So
I know. That's cool. All right. So it's cool catching up with you and everything. I want to ask you some quick questions.
All right.
This is the fun part. All right. So first of all, I want to know where the best barbecue in Texas is.
Oh man. My favorite place is probably Cooper's, the original up in Llano, Texas.
What's the best there? Is it ribs or is it
Oh,
brisket?
they've got a
Or what do they
pork chop
got?
that's about that thick.
Hell
And
yeah.
oh man, yeah. If we get you over here next year, we'll have to swing through there. So,
I'd say so, because Texas is known for barbecue and good food. So that's cool. All right. So you got a choice. You can buy, you can rent, you can sell these three
all right.
things. You got a fly rod, a spin rod, and a bait caster.
Oh man, I'm gonna buy a spinning rod for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just always been my most versatile tool.
Okay. Which one are you renting?
Fly rod.
Okay. Which one are you selling? The bait caster? Because
probably
you got too many of them, or why?
I just don't use them. You know, being a charter fisherman down here, spinning rods are the way to go for most of my clientele.
That's interesting, because when we were fishing those redfish tournaments, there was definitely a line where you crossed into Louisiana and people were all about the bait caster. Then you crossed another line where they were back into the spinning rod. And then when you went over to Texas, nobody wanted any spinning rods. Like it was just an interesting kind of thing, because I never understood it. I'm like, so you feel like you can throw a bait caster into a 30-mile-an-hour wind with a weightless plastic, like as far as I can throw this spinning rod? Like, and some of those guys were like, "Yep, sure can."
Yep.
I'm like, "Okay, I mean, good for you, because it's going to be a bird's nest with me." But they were 100% dead set on it. Didn't see any use for a spinning rod. But it's interesting, because maybe they just hadn't tried it much. All right, so if you had the choice, you have to. You either can hunt or you can fish. That's the only thing you can do for the rest of your life. Which is it?
10 years ago, the answer would have been different, but I think hunting would be it now.
Hunting? Yep.
As much as I like to fish.
And what's your species of choice?
Turkeys.
Turkeys. Right on.
Yeah,
okay.
Obviously.
Yep. Very cool. Your turkey hunting would... The rattlesnake part. I mean, we have rattlesnakes.
All about that.
I know. We have rattlesnakes too, but in the area that I hunt the most, I've never seen a rattlesnake, and that's why it's the area that I hunt the most. There's probably more turkeys other places, but I know that there are also rattlesnakes there, so I'm not crazy about the rattlesnakes.
Your boys ratted you out when they were over here in Texas, saying that you do not like snakes.
I'm not crazy about snakes. I mean, I don't have like a phobia, but I also don't like poison ivy, and I don't get close to either one of them, right? You know what I mean? It's like, why? Why do you want to mess with it? Why would I want to pick up poison ivy? I could drop it or fall down and rub it all over myself. I don't know. I don't want to do that. Ugh. So, like, somebody was asking me the other day, they were like, what do you have a cure for poison ivy? And I said, yeah, learn how to identify it 6 feet away and don't go there. That's that's my cure for poison ivy.
That's the best one.
Don't get there. Don't go there. Like, if you have a place to sit and it's all brown and you know, one tree that's all brown with dead leaves all around it, and then you have another tree that's got all this bright green growth around it, I don't even have to identify it. I'm not sitting over there. I'm going to sit on the brown one, right? Like, that's just, to me, that's just common sense. But that common sense only comes from being covered with poison ivy a few times in my life, to where you're like, I'm not doing that again. But the worst,
my dad just has to get near it and he gets it. He breaks out. Man.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, some people have, I mean, I'm not super allergic to it or anything, but I can certainly get it. And it's not fun when you do get it. But the worst that I've seen is, I did not know that those hairy vines that go up the trees were poison sumac or poison something. And I climbed a tree to get to put up a tree stand, and I got that stuff all over me, man, all over me, and that was really bad. So I don't mess with hairy vines anymore, and I don't sit in bright green vegetation. That's a good way. Okay, cool, man. Well, I appreciate you having the boys down there. I know they had a really good time, and they met some really interesting people. And have been telling me all about it. So I hope that next year, this summit that you're doing will continue to grow, and I'd love to come next year. It'd be awesome. But I know there were some great podcasts that were done there while you guys were there.
we had such a wide variety of guests that came. I mean, I know you probably know who was there, but I mean, we had a guy from Oklahoma, Todd Craighead, who hosts the Outdoor Oklahoma show up there, and then we had Lou Marillo, who is a writer for Texas Fishing Game magazine, but he lives in New York. But he is also goes by the name of Eric Adams, and he is also the lead singer for the heavy metal band Manowar.
Right.
And heavy metal and turkey hunting. He's like, how the heck does that come together? But Lou was just an incredible person to have in camp with us. And I know the boys enjoyed getting to talk to him and stuff. And hopefully go up to New York and do some turkey hunting with him sometime soon.
Wow, that would be cool to turkey hunt in New York, because that's not a place that I would be like, I'm going turkey hunting and the dream destination is New York. But I'm sure that there's some fantastic. I mean, I've been to upstate New York around the Lake Placid area and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like there's a lot of good turkey hunting up there.
Yeah,
I mean, there's
a lot of birds up there. So it's crazy. And and next year we're hoping to have more podcasters, more guests come in. We're going to be doing it at a bigger ranch and have a lot more stuff to go on, and really looking forward and super excited about what's to come with the Hunt Fish podcast deal.
Nice. Well, I wish you all the luck with it. And it's great catching up with you again today. We'll do it again. But let everybody know how to get a hold of you, how to follow what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me at my charter Spot Stalker Guide Service or Spot Stalker Fishing on Instagram and Facebook, and Impact Outdoors Podcast, Facebook, Instagram. We're super excited to be part of Waypoint Collective now.
Nice.
And being on there and, being able to get some great content out, and please follow us along there and listen to all our interviews.
All right. I'm sure they will. They will. Well, Derek, always nice to catch up with you, and good job on all the kids' work that you're doing. That's super important.
Thanks, Tom.
That'll be it for today, man. We'll catch up again soon.
All right. Sounds
Thanks,
good.
Derek. See you.
See you.